Today, we're at Aston Martin Houston to take a first look at the brand new Aston Martin Vanquish. Having owned one of the previous generations myself, I'm excited to bring you along for a full tour of the new car, the rebirth of an iconic name, a strict two-seater Super GT that's awaiting us behind the curtains. Come with me because we're going to get the covers pulled back in a second to take a full first look at what lies beneath Aston's new 835 horsepower, incredibly good-looking Vanquish. Let me pull this off. Check this out. Welcome to the family, the new Aston Martin Vanquish. From many beautiful details in the design, to a twin turbocharged V12, to a full glass roof, to many elements I want to run you through today. We're going to take a look around the exterior, the interior, talk about the engine, the facts and figures, the technology under the skin. Hi guys, I'm Shmi. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Let's explore the new Vanquish. There's clearly a lot to tell you about this car. Let's start with a 1 or 2 minute introduction, highlights, if you will, of the new Vanquish. So the name badge, we've seen a number of times. It's almost alternated in recent years between Vanquish and DBS. A couple of years ago, we saw the arrival of the DBS 770 Ultimate. And then, of course, with the evolution from DB11 to DB12, we now have a new flagship V12 GT. The design is incredible, if I can say so myself, from the familiar Kamm tail to this new shield that sits below, flanked by these tail lights, which I'd like to show you. I've got the key right here as well, matched to the interior. Unlock it, and the way these illuminate, lovely detail that's carried through from the Vulcan and a number of other models. The proportions of the car, it's a very long thing, very wide and very low. There are 177-esque design cues, which has always been one of the prettiest looking cars ever made, let alone only from Aston Martin. It sits about 80 millimeters longer than the DBS 770, most of which is found here between the A-pillar and the front axle, giving it this enormously long front end, the hood, the bonnet of the car. Around at the front, you've got a larger grille, sportier in its appearance, 13% larger for more cooling towards the V12. We've got a new LED headlight with some AI-designed inlays I'll show you later on. Of course, here as well, check out the thermos louvers that run over the top, again to help with airflow, to help with cooling, because this is also the fastest production Aston Martin ever at 214 miles an hour, 345 kilometers an hour. There's a lot more going on underneath the skin as well. The Bilstein DTX dampers have been reworked. We've got 21-inch wheels as standard with carbon ceramic brakes. We've got a new Pirelli P0 tyre as well, specifically for AML. At the side, you've got these side strakes with the inlay panel behind them. Lovely design detail. Always one of my favourite things about Aston Martin. Carryovers as well from Vantage, for example, the frameless door mirrors, minimising surface area to help, of course, with drag. And then on the inside, again, a huge evolution. As we saw with the DBX 707, the Vantage and the DB12, we've now got Aston's completely in-house next generation infotainment. Again, we'll take more of a look at the interior as well later on, but there are some really nice details in here that we've got to run through also. This is the flagship of its type. It's a car I think many of us knew was coming, but I want to now show you around in more detail all of the details of Vanquish. Starting from the very nose, this is of course a familiar design. Aston Martin's new design language, very much inspired by the 177. Absolutely no bad thing in my eyes in the slightest. So this grille, much larger than even the DBS 770 Ultimate, 13% larger in fact, for the cooling of the V12, which we'll take a look at in a moment. You've got the openings around the side, all to do with directing airflow, and we've got the optional carbon fibre package here as well, with the lower splitter finished in exposed satin carbon fibre. Come a little higher, and we've got the new headlight design, again familiar from the family, with those 6 blades that you see above, and then that silver strake that runs beneath it with the Aston Martin script. Now interestingly, as I mentioned, this front silver part that wraps around is designed with AI to reduce the glare for oncoming drivers. I love those kinds of details. It is a very, very long front end. In fact, it's quite a large car overall. I'll give you some of the dimensions in a moment, but the big change is to increase the length of the chassis. The 80mm extended wheelbase, which you find sitting in this section up here. Not only that, it's significantly stiffer. It's actually 75% stiffer than the outgoing DBS 770 Ultimate as well, but bringing back some of these favourite Aston Martin design cues, right? Things like the strake that sits here. On production cars, you'll have the V12 motif in red finished as well. Of course, we had the opportunity today to take a look at this car before it goes into full production later this year. In fact, in Q4, the first cars are going to be delivered to customers with a maximum of only 1,000 being built per year. As we come around towards the back, the body at the rear is actually 10mm wider than the DBS 770 as well. So it's a very wide, very low profile car. But coming round towards the tail, it's this new shield design that stands out to me. The way that you have this floating panel, in fact, as you open it up, this all comes with it, which can be finished in body colour, in contrasting black, or even in carbon fibre, with these tail lamp units that come down towards the side, and the way that we saw as they illuminate very much this new Aston Martin style design, but maintaining the camtail ducktail spoiler that runs up over the top. There's also an optional exhaust system, titanium, 10.5 kilos lighter than the standard system, and again we've got more exposed carbon fibre running around the tail of the car as well. It couldn't be a flagship Aston Martin GT without a V12, and we need to talk about the engine. Now, of course, the arrival of the DB12, ironically for the name, came with the V8, a very potent, very powerful, very enjoyable engine, but this carries through the 5.2 litre twin turbocharged V12. So let me open this up from the right-hand side, pop open the carbon fibre front end, and take a look at what lies beneath before we go through some of the details about it. This is absolutely stunning. Finished with the carbon fibre engine panel over the top, but the twin turbocharged V12 sitting very far back in this elongated front compartment beneath the exposed carbon fibre above. Now, to give you some of the numbers, 835 horsepower, that's 824 brake horsepower, 1,000 newton meters of torque. That gives you a 0 to 100 kilometre per hour, 62 mile per hour time of 3.3 seconds. 0 to 60 miles an hour is only 3.2. The top speed, as I mentioned, 214 miles per hour. Now, there's been a lot that's been done with this, but one thing to talk about is the new boost reserve, which effectively spools up the turbochargers with no real notice for the driver, but giving you more instantaneous response and, of course, more power as well. We have the 8-speed ZF gearbox, which for the first time is now mated to an electronic rear limited differential, an EDIF, which, of course, is going to change the dynamic side of the drive. But I think it's safe to say this is going to be a very powerful, very potent thing, which I guess in a second we'll be able to take a little listen to and get started up. As we move inside, one thing you will spot as you unlock the car, we have self-presenting door handles that pop themselves out. This is also the key to show you a little bit more closely. The Aston Martin script on the side. Aston have always made very nice key designs. The Wings logo inside the glass on the end. And of course, as I mentioned, the trim, which matches the interior, and your choices in there as well. Pop open the doors, and they are the swan style design that opens upwards as they go outwards over the top of any curbs. And also, interestingly, if you've not seen this before, they can actually be opened to any position, and they will then hold in that exact position. You don't have a restriction of only a couple of places to which you can open the door. Inside, though, again, as I said earlier, a massive upgrade to the new generation of infotainment, all of the new technology that we've seen across the lineup, the Vantage DB12 and DBX 707. We've got a few other unique details specifically to this car. Note the inlays, perforations, and the style of the design of the seats, and also spot behind where you have a carbon brace that runs over the top, part of the stiffness and the support beam that runs within. There's also some space for your fitted luggage. Aston say that it will hold in position even while driving spiritedly if you have it back there, although of course a strict two-seater. There's no room or option like previous models in the flagship lineup to have a 2+2 configuration, although they were never particularly useful for additional seats back there to begin with. Inside here then, the 10.25-inch central display, additional 10.25-inch display for the driver's cockpit as well. The shift paddles are mounted to the back of the steering wheel. Love the elongated paddle design. And while there are a lot of buttons here, I have to say having physical buttons rather than needing to navigate every single function through a touchscreen is still a massive positive in my book. Just makes life that little bit easier. We've got the carbon fibre trim in here for the dashboard inlays with the air conditioning vents mounted within, also for the door cards as well. And as you can see, although I apologise for the dim light, we've got the dark green leather of the seats in here. Now, a big thing is this glass roof, tinted to only allow in 6% of light. You can't change it due to the curvature. It can't have the electrochromic functionality, but I tell you what, it makes the cabin feel incredibly airy, and I am a big fan of that glass roof option, which I would certainly insist upon having within this car. So sitting in here, press the button just to wake it up. We'll press again to turn on the power. We get some of the Aston Martin graphics, of course. This particular model is, of course, a pre-production car that we're able to explore and take a look around today, but we'll just make sure that it's ready. Could do with being plugged in a second. I've been playing around for a little bit too long, but you can see all the inlays. I like the design here of this trim in the shadow chrome. You can opt to have that in a number of different styles and configurations. We've got the plaque over the door sill, but the feeling that you're in something very luxurious, very smart. For example, the Bowers & Wilkins sound system with many speakers, 15 speakers, a standard thing actually within the new Vanquish as well. Now, foot on the brake and press the red button. Actually, when you do brake, it illuminates, as we've seen in older models as well. Press this, and we have a 12-cylinder soundtrack. A little bit of a display from the headlights as they illuminate, but conscious this car doesn't have a huge amount of fuel in it, and we can't keep it running for too long. The Bowers & Wilkins sub that obviously sits behind, and the shape back here. Notice how gentle the roofline slopes back towards the rear. It's a fairly narrow gap, but you do feel like you have decent visibility overall, just because of the amount of glass that sits around. Now, of course, you've got different driving modes. As you do change up between those, you've got the selector that you can rotate, and you can notice when you go into Sport, Sport Plus, and then track mode, the exhaust valves open with the titanium exhaust that we've got on this. You also have the option to configure ESC to go through a number of different settings. Very nice, very nice. We'll turn it off for the moment, for the time being. But of course, this is a very, very pleasant place to be. Worth noting that a glove box has been reintroduced, the thing that was missing arguably in some of the other models. But overall, this is a cabin that I suppose you could spend a very long time in and enjoy the road, enjoy the drive an awful lot. There's a general shift anyway to new generations of cars getting bigger and bigger, right? But I want to talk about the dimensions of this because it is a big car. Make no mistake about it. To use the metric numbers, it's 4 meters 85 long. To put that into perspective, the Audi RS6, which not only has front seats, but rear seats and a very large amount of luggage space, is 4 meters 97, only 12 centimeters longer. The closest competitor, the Ferrari Dodici Cilindri, is actually 12 centimeters shorter as well at 4 meters 73. Even the previous DBS 770 Ultimate was 4 meters 71. So you're going to feel like this is a very big car on the road, but that gives it these amazing proportions. That gives it these amazing lines, and you have to commend Aston Martin for the design, right? Once the new Vantage arrived on the scene, I think pretty much everybody, myself included, was blown away by how that car looks. And I feel like they've knocked it out of the park again. This feels like the big brother to new Vantage. There are a lot of familiar design cues, which is only natural in a company like Aston Martin's design language, and to be able to see that consistency. But there's also enough that's different that makes it feel like a much bigger step up. Whether it's those thermos louvres here, and the more time I spend looking at this design and the way that's shaped and sculpted over the front, the more impressed I am by it, or whether it's the completely different tail, the rear end, and I do want to show you a little bit more of that as well. But like I said, it's the fact that it's grown in size that gives you the additional comfort inside, that gives you more of the technology that's under the skin as well, not only the dampers, but also the electronic power assisted steering and the rework that's been done to that, and all of the other functionality of it. But this amazing profile, I mean, standing at the side of it, it looks phenomenal from every angle. I don't feel with the new Vanquish that I have to go and stand at one place in particular to be able to catch its best light. You have that pretty much anywhere you go. It's a new option to have the bronze paint for the wheels against the silver on this car. Of course, some of these larger cars often look very elegant in dark colors, in different greens, traditional Aston Martin, or even in bright, leery colors, as we see on new Vantage as well. And with many different options for the configuration and for Aston Martin's Q division to be able to personalize and make it even more bespoke as well, clearly you have the option to make a very unique new Vanquish. Talking a little bit about luggage space and a bit more about the shield here at the back, because I find this design really quite interesting. When you pop open the tailgate, and under the right-hand side back here, there is a little rubber, give that a press, and it pops this open. You'll notice how the side panel opens out and around the top. And I think that's a very neat piece of design to be integrated like that. This is the panel, of course, with the Aston Martin script that can be opted in a number of different configurations. Inside, where we currently have a really quite large Union Jack, Union Flag, Union Jack flag, whatever you'd like to call it, you can see that there is a decent amount of luggage space back here in combination with the area that you also have behind the seats. So no shortage of luggage to be taking this car out on a decent road trip or adventure. And the design of this wraparound area, this whole segment, I think is very smoothly done. And imagine what it would look like, for example, with this panel finished in a different configuration. We have soft close, as well as you've just seen on the tailgate, tucking itself back down, but all part of this sloping boot line. The clean air that comes over the top coming through here, enough downforce to keep the car planted and positioned without having all sorts of crazy aero up in your face on something that ultimately is trying to be elegant but mean business. A beast cloaked in a suit with these very wide arches, as well as you look over the sides of the car from the rear, and again this exhaust system back here. So these can be finished in a number of different styles. You can see the design that the exhaust tailpipes wear, but the titanium system sitting within being responsible for that grunt and power that you're going to be hearing a whole lot of when you're out driving in the new Vanquish. Other things to touch on then, while we're looking at the car, the tyres. I mentioned the specific AML designated Pirelli P0 tyres. What's interesting about them, and the reason for having effectively tyres developed for the car, is that these have noise cancelling technology, so enhancing the ride, the sound, the driving experience, but also being developed for this specific configuration, layout, size, weight, etc. While we're here, I gotta say those brakes are enormous. Carbon ceramic brakes, 410mm at the front, 360mm at the rear, black calipers here, of course, but those can be configured and customized as you wish. Of course, also it always has the latest technology. So notice under the door mirrors, you've got your 360 cameras, reversing camera. The mirrors themselves, actually, when you lock the car, this is quite interesting. Their functionality to auto fold is very unusual. We saw this on Vanquish as well. When you lock it, press the button just here, they actually fold inwards in quite an unusual way, but obviously maximizing or minimizing the width, maximizing the clearance. Just quite unusual when the glass faces upwards. So if you leave it parked outside in the rain, they're going to get a whole load of raindrops on them. Anyway, looks very nice once they're opened back up and in position with the carbon fiber mirror caps as well. There's obviously a lot to it. You have your adaptive cruise control, you have all sorts of the latest functionality and features that you would expect, wonderful sound system inside, and overall, a car that's really quite impressed me to this point, to be able to take a look around it and learn a little bit more. While that we're here, I'd like to talk as well about the previous generation Vanquish. In fact, we should rewind to the first generation car, the Newport Pagnell era car, the car that you know from Die Another Day that launched back in 2001, designed by Kamm. Then it was followed up by the second generation Vanquish, which succeeded the DBS based on the VH platform of the DB9 at the time. But the Vanquish has always been the flagship, the sportier, but still elegant, still grand tourer, just super GT is the right wording. This particular car is very similar to what I had. I had a Volante, this is a coupe, but it's also a carbon edition with carbon badges presented in the very black on black look. It had the upgraded 8-speed gearbox as well, but there are a few design cues really to mention here. Firstly, the sporty look and the style and form factor, but the strakes, for example, at the side, a thing that we've seen carry through to the new car. Come round towards the tail of it though, and spot also even the design into the tail lamps and how that connects to the shield that we've just been seeing on the newer model. Now, this generation arrived a decade after the first, but we now move into the third generation of Vanquish. It's another new era of Aston Martin, although Marek Reichman leading the team who were responsible for designing this car, in fact starting with the DBS, this car's predecessor, and obviously onwards into new Vanquish as well. But having enjoyed this, of course, at the time with the naturally aspirated V12, either 5.9 or 6 litres, depending how you'd like to call it, the NA power plant to the new 5.2 twin turbo, yes, you might lose a little in terms of the outright sound, but you certainly gain a lot in terms of the performance, which ultimately is a big part of what all of this is about. But again, this generation of car, a lot of carbon fiber bodywork, again, we see that carrying through, and the positioning in the lineup, really, the direction Vanquish was always about, and it's great, really, to see this name return. Coming back to this car, I've still got the key, but as you unlock it and the lights illuminate, you can see that pattern of the daytime running lights. This is a very, very pretty looking car. It's the flagship of the portfolio. It is the next chapter for Aston Martin. Of course, there was a lot that was needed in terms of updating the infotainment and the interior. That was one of the things lacking a little bit in the previous cars, even in the DBS 770 Ultimate. It was never quite, I'm going to say, fully up to scratch, whereas this is leaps and bounds ahead. Usability of that system, which I've enjoyed in the new Vantage when driving that, and hopefully we'll be able to share a drive of one of these in the near future with you as well, is a big thing going forwards. It's a big update. So deliveries will begin in Q4 of this year, the end of 2024, going very quickly from introduction to being in production to being out there on the roads, customer cars already being configured, the first cars being specified, being put together, and I can imagine a very exciting process because of course there are a lot of things you can choose on a car like this, which they're only going to be making 1,000 of a year. It's not a big production run. You won't be seeing a ton of them out on the road, and ultimately, as we stand here looking at it, I think this is one very good looking car. To quote Aston's phrase, a brute in a suit. It is a brutal car if you think about the facts, the figures and the technology. It's a very elegant, smart car to look at and behold. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for joining me. Thank you to all who made it possible to come out here today to take a look here at Aston Martin of Houston. This is the new Vanquish. Thanks again for watching. That's it for now, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.